Thank you. I know we still have some folks coming in. I want to get started because we have a lot to get through. We want to get to the part where we can have some discussion. Our agenda today is to go through some introduction and background. How we got here today, review some housing plans and ideas, and then share with you the ideas that our housing committee and zoning committee are currently considering, and hopefully then get to Q&A discussion period where we get your feedback on some of those ideas. The purpose of today's meeting is that we've been working, or I've been working with the committees to develop some zoning updates to implement the comprehensive plan, which was adopted last November. And we've been trying to work out some different ideas to address housing issues in the town of Chatham. And we found that there are a lot of different options to consider, and there are a lot of different variables and different details that sometimes we don't necessarily agree on as committee and so forth. And so what we felt was it was important to have a pencil down moment, if you will, and take what we had put together so far and take it to the public, share what we're thinking, and get some feedback, because we want to avoid a situation where we go through the trouble of doing all this work and then we try and pass the zoning updates and it gets rejected at the public level. We want to avoid that, so we wanted to sort of share with you what we're thinking and get a sense from you what ideas you think you would agree with, which ones you don't agree with, before we went too much further. So the committees are going to use the comments that we collect today, and also we have an online comment form for folks that weren't able to make it today. So you can submit comments for another week or so. We'll compile all those and maybe we'll start to review those and make considerations going forward. Before we get started, it looks like many of you took again. We put together a housing primer, which was, I think, emailed out to many people. The idea behind that is it provides a lot of background info to this presentation because it helped us reduce the number of slides and how long my presentation is, so that we can get more to the discussion part. So please try and refer to that and try not to duplicate stuff that's in the primer. That's the idea. For our folks on Zoom, it looks like we have a couple. When we get to the Q&A period, we're going to try and take turns, like maybe every 3 or so questions or comments. Take a comment from Zoom, check in with you. And so if you have any comments or questions at home on Zoom, please type it in the chat, and Destiny will flag it down and share the question with us. We also have comment cards on the front desk. If you want to take notes, we have pens, or you just feel like you're more comfortable writing in your comments and submitting it that way, that's fine too. And fire department has been very gracious to provide this space for us today and clear out the space. They've asked us, though, we have a pretty hard stop around 4 o'clock, so we'll try and honor that and keep it track. So, 2023 comprehensive plan was adopted last November. It included many recommendations for different options, changes, policies, goals for the town, many of which involve housing, because housing was identified as a concern for many people. So several of those goals have already been accomplished, including the passage of the community preservation plan and short-term rental ordinance and so forth. So we're slowly chipping away at those. But since then, the zoning update committee and the housing committee, I've been working with them, and we were looking at what recommendations to tackle. And it was fairly unanimous that the committee felt the housing was probably the priority to try and tackle first, because how it affects everybody. And so we wanted to try and tackle that first. Joining with us today are members of both the zoning update committee and the housing committees. If you want to raise your hand, or they're not wearing yellow vests or anything, so they're here with us today. I've been working with them developing some of these ideas. And as I said, they felt that the housing issue was the #1 priority for us to try and address first. Overall, speaking broadly, our housing goals are to try and provide more diverse housing types for different stages of life, whether you're young or raising a family or getting older, and also to provide more diverse housing types to meet different levels of financial ability and affordability. And those are, sort of in a nutshell, what our goals are. Right now, we have a number of housing issues. I'll just briefly recap, but I mean, we have very high real estate prices. The median home value here has gone up to over $400,000 just in the last couple of years. It's skyrocketed. We have limited housing available for young renters, workforce people, young families, seniors looking to downsize. And we also have some increased competition with the short-term rental market, which is putting a squeeze on things sometimes. So right now, we are trying to address some of those issues and find some availability for more housing options that meet the needs. Right now, according to the 2022 census data, 35% of folks in the Chatham area are paying more than 30% of their income on housing, which is not ideal. It's above, generally the threshold is about 30%. And so that's something that we're trying to address. And in the 2022 Chatham's Community Survey, which we did as part of the comprehensive plan, some of the housing types which were most identified as being needed and desired in town include smaller starter homes, senior apartments, assisted living, and accessory apartments. And that's something that we're trying to take forward. So just quickly a review of what we have now. If we were to look at the different, unfortunately the zones on the top of my screen are locked up by this Zoom thing. That helps. So we have the different zones, Hamlet 1, Hamlet 2, Rural Lands 1, Rural Lands 2, Rural Lands 3, and Business District. I haven't put the industrial district on here because no housing is really allowed there. So right now, the existing zone is single family houses. I need to cut down the coffee. And laser point single family houses are allowed by right, a full circle is allowed by right, and an empty circle would be a special use permit, which requires more approvals to get approved. But single family housing is allowed by right in every one of these zones, and it accounts for 72% of all the housing stock in the town of Chatham. 2 single family houses on one lot is something that's an option in Chatham. You have to have twice the amount of land to do it. It's possible. It's basically just another form of single family home that is allowed by right in all the Hamlet and rural zones. 2-family dwelling unit is allowed in those same zones, but only with a special use permit right now. So there's additional reviews and approvals that you need to get in order to start some of the place. Limited multifamily, which is basically anything no more than 4 dwelling units in one building, are only allowed in the hamlets by special permit. And just going back, the 2-family housing represents about 7% of the housing stock in the town, and limited multifamily of 4 or less units is about 5% of the housing stock. Multifamily, anything other than is just 3 or more units, so there's no cap to it. Anything more than 3 is only allowed in special permit from the business district. And then finally, nursing and convalescent homes are technically allowed by special permit in the hamlets and also in the rural land 3 district. But we don't really have. I don't actually have official stats on that. Just taking that observation. But it's interesting to note that the percentage of land in these districts, Hamlet 1 represents about 5.3% of our total town. Hamlet 2 is 0.6%. So the areas where we're allowed to do multifamily represent less than 6% of the whole town. You can include business district, about 70% of the whole town is where you can do any sort of multifamily. And so that's kind of putting a pinch on things. So looking at a broad brush, 72% of our housing stock is single family housing right now. And it's allowed in 100% of the town, whereas 90% of our housing stock is multifamily. It's harder to get approved, and it's only allowed in 7% of the town. So, I mean, it's part of the reason why we have this housing squeeze right now. And much of that area where it's allowed, such as the hamlets, those are already largely developed. There's very little room to build anything through a lot of the hamlets. So we can say it's allowed, but there's not really anywhere to build it. So looking at next, what we need in working with the committee, what we've been doing is trying to identify housing that will work for different sort of life stages, from a young adult who's just out of school or so forth, growing up, starting a family, raising a family, empty nesters, and then working on toward the more senior years. We want to provide something that provides steps all along that path. And right now, we feel that there's gaps. So if we look at the population distribution right now, roughly in the town of Chatham, it looks like this from young adults up. Right now, we have a big wave of folks coming through and on down. This roughly corresponds to that bracket, I would say. This is what we're trying to address in the needs of folks. And if we were to sort of graph that, this is essentially the sort of bell curve, if you will, of how that population is distributed throughout the town at different age levels. In 10 years from now, this whole line is going to shift forward 10 years. So it's going to be out here where many of these folks are going to be older, and many of these younger adults are going to be coming into the market. And that's something we have to try and I think realize as a reality and address. So right now, with 72% of our housing stock in single family, it's right in this sort of realm right here, right? As we're coming into this dip. A lot of the population is moving on forward, and we have some younger population moving in. So it's really only addressing this sort of middle ground, if you will. As I illustrate this middle ground of what the different life cycles are, when we should be looking at an increased need here for the younger singles and couples just starting out, as well as seniors who are looking to downsize and still remain in the area, age in place, and have some options to live in Chatham as they age. One element that's missing, particularly sort of nursing homes, we don't really have anything for that right now. We need to cover this life cycle column as we go. At the other end of the spectrum, we have a much bigger need to address these folks here. Some two-family or some sort of multi-family options where they have a rental apartment or something to move into after college. And then there's two missing steps, if you will, in the overall steps going here, and that is basically right here and here. We need something for these folks to move up to start homes before moving into larger housing, and then folks here transitioning as well. So we're really looking at sort of infill here for seniors downsizing and also starter homes for young adults right here. So that's in a nutshell, those are the two areas that we started to focus on with the committees as far as addressing some of the housing needs. So some of the other housing types or options that we're looking at for this, many of which are described in more detail in the handout, the primary call. These were developed with the committee specifically because we recognize that folks are concerned about the character of Chatham, and we don't want to change the character of Chatham. It's very beautiful. So how do we address the housing need and also be mindful of that? And So all of these housing types were developed and selected because they're relatively smaller in scale, they're relatively smaller footprint, they would fit into the sort of older historic countryside of the area, and also kind of promote the adaptive reuse of some older structures. The benefit of that being, if somebody takes an older home and renovates the interior to make 2 or 3 apartments inside, from the outside, it still looks like a charming old home. It hasn't made any changes to the character of the environment. It still looks like Chatham. So if we can do more of that, that is something that I think would help to address the housing needs, but also protect the character of the area. So the housing types that we're looking at, they're described in a little bit more detail in the primer. Accessory dwelling units allowing you to build a second smaller unit on your property. It doesn't need all the lot space of a full single family house. You can put it anywhere you can put a garage or an accessory building. It would address is great for, aging family members or so forth, or anyone who's rented. Multifamily conversions are what I was just referring to with regards to being able to adaptively reuse some of the buildings, older homes, older farmhouses that we have in the area. We're looking at those in sort of 2 different sizes, if you will. We have a limited version, which is much like a limited multifamily. It's already in zoning. A limited version, which would have 3 to 4 dwelling units in it, and then a regular version, if you will, which would be 5 to 8 units. I put some of these numbers in brackets because they're kind of placeholders. In discussions with the committee, we couldn't always decide on what those numbers should be. What's the sweet spot? So I put some things in brackets to show we don't know. We're unsure about this, and we'd like to hear what you think. Also, 2-family dwellings. This is basically essentially very good, especially for some seniors want a single-level home. It's a little bit more efficient to build in terms of cost than a whole single family by itself on the same lot. So it provides a little bit more efficiency. Cottage courts or tiny homes, which would allow a cluster of 8 to 10 very small cottages on a relatively small area of land. They're small in scale, can be quite charming, and there's a lot of options. They have some shared parking, so not every house has its own garage and driveway, but they have some shared amenities which make it more efficient from a space sense. Mixed use with work, where you have commercial space on the bottom and residential space upstairs. Not directly addressed in the zoning. We wanted to clarify that this is something that we'd like to see in certain areas, the older commercial areas. Multifamily dwellings, again, like the multifamily conversions above. Looking at these in 2 different sizes also, where we would have a limited version, which would maybe only 3 or 4 units per structure or per property, and then a regular one, which might be maybe 5 to 8. Again, these numbers are in brackets because we haven't quite decided on what's the right threshold. Senior apartments and senior housing units is something that we want to address. Now, these are larger scale, but it's something that, especially with a lot of baby boomer generation aging, is something that's going to be very important in the area. And lastly, planned residential development, which allows for some flexibility in mixing some different styles and types of housing together in a way you wouldn't normally be able to do. But we have some leverage with that in approving it only if they can meet certain criteria that we would like to see them meet, such as they're providing a certain type of housing or a certain affordability, a certain percentage at an affordability level or so forth. And that would be good more of a rezoning with town board approval, but it's one option. So, current considerations. This is the part I wanted to get to here. This is what we're looking at right now. Okay, well, so for accessory dwelling unit, as I mentioned, it's sort of a separate standalone structure on your house. Right now, we're considering writing new section of the zoning code which would specifically allow and address accessory dwelling units. What we're thinking right now is one accessory dwelling unit per single-family property would be allowed. Having a size limitation of no more than 2,000 square feet, so someone's not building a gargantuan thing that isn't necessary, unless you're creating inside an existing structure. Maybe you have an older structure or barn on your property. You can convert as much of the inside of that as you want. The idea is that you would be able to visually see any difference outside. This would be reviewed and approved in the same process that any accessory structure on your property would get reviewed and approved. It's without it's more just a building permit process. This would be right now allowed by right, without any discretionary review in all of anywhere you have a residential district or anywhere you have a residential home right now. And there's discussion within the communities as to whether or not we want to restrict them from being able to be used as short-term rentals. This is a debate we're having because, on the one hand, we don't want to build an accessory dwelling unit and then just use it as an Airbnb all year for the purpose of addressing our local housing need. But on the other side, it creates some complications from an ownership standpoint and so forth that we're not sure how to proceed with that. So right now, if we look at, this is the zoning that we're allowed right now, single family, one lot, 2-family dwellings, limited multifamily, and multifamily So we would be adding to the top of the list here, accessory dwelling units, anything in green, I'm showing as new, this is what we're proposed, or anything in color, I guess, is what we're proposed. The full circles mean that it's allowed by right, as we see now. So we would be allowed by right accessory dwelling units in all of the hamlet, rural land, and business districts, and UDUs that would be added. We next look at single family down the list. Right now, as I mentioned, that's already allowed by right in all these districts. There would be no change to that. We have another single family, 2 single family on the lot, again, would be allowed by right as it is today. There would be no change to that. We get to the 2-family dwellings. Right now, those are allowed by special use permit. So they're currently allowed by special use permit in most of the towns. We're considering the 2-family dwellings instead be allowed by right, just as any single-family home is right now. So without any discretionary review in the same districts. So treating 2-family houses the same as single-family houses. So 2-family dwellings on this chart would be allowed by right in the hamlet and rural land districts. So it's changed to now by right. I apologize to the folks on Zoom, we can't see my laser pointer skills. Now we're getting into limited multifamily conversions. This is the sort of smaller version of that. Considering allowing these conversions limited to the creation of no more than 3 to 4 dwelling units, as I mentioned. These would be confined to the existing footprint of the building as it stands. You wouldn't be permitted to expand the building in order to do this. The idea is to keep the outside of the home looking essentially the way it is today, so we're not changing the character. So no exterior expansion. Limited conversions would be permitted with site plan review in the H1 and H2 districts, is what we're thinking currently. And these would be allowed by right without discretionary review in the rural land districts. So we go now limited multifamily conversions up to 3 to 4 units. So it would be with site plan review in the hamlets, and then permitted by right in the rural lands. This is a new use that doesn't exist right now. Then we get to limited multifamily. This is an existing use that already exists right now. It's much similar to what we just described. 3 to 4 units, except in this case, you're building new. This is for the new construction of 3 to 4 dwelling units. This is currently already allowed right now by special permit in the 2 hamlet districts. What we're considering is leaving that as is, but also permitting it with site plan review in the rural land districts. And also having maximum size cap. So we're looking at 4 units, about 1,000 square feet a piece, roughly, let's say, so 4,000 square feet. So maximum size of 4,000 square feet overall. So we're adding that here. So limited multifamily, 3 to 4 units. Again, this is new construction. Maintaining its current status right now of being allowed only or permitted only with special permit in the hamlets, but with site plan review in the rural district. So this use is existing, but we expanded where we can take it. Multifamily conversions, right? This is a lot to cover, I apologize. Multifamily conversions is a larger version of the limited multifamily conversion we discussed. So instead of 3 to 4, instead of renovating an existing house to include 3 to 4 new dwelling units, this would be allowing up to 5 to 8. So these conversions limited creation no more than 5 to 8 dwelling units. Again, just like its baby's brother, it would be confined to the footprint of the existing building, and these conversions would be allowed by right without discretionary review in the 3 rural districts. So looking at this chart again, then we have multifamily conversions 5 to 8 units allowed by right in the rural lands. Again, remind you the difference between the multifamily versions and the conversion versions. The conversion is renovating and trying to adapt the reuse of existing house. And now just regular multifamily. Multifamily units right now are allowed 3 or more, anything more. There's no cap on it right now. So it's just an existing use for the new construction of 3 or more dwelling units. What we're doing is considering capping that so that we have maybe nowhere between 5 to 8 units per, with a maximum square foot of 8,000 square feet. And considering changing them to be permitted with site plan review in the business district and by special use permit in the RL1 and RL2 zones. So multifamily here on the list, instead of being anything more than 3 or more units, would be capped at between 5 and 8. There would be site plan, that's a special use permit in the 2 rural lands and site plan review in the business district. So this use is kind of been expanded in where it would be allowed. Mixed use, as I mentioned, considering clarifying zoning and adding this as a specific use so people understand that it's something that can be done. And this use would be allowed by right in the business district and also permitted by special use permit in the H2 district. So the more commercial of the 2 districts. So if we go back to our table here, we have mixed use, allowed a special use permit in the H2 and allowed by right in the business district. And this is essentially, we would argue, a new district. Cottage court's one of the more, I think, progressive or advanced of the different options that we're looking at. Is really, designing a cluster of very small cottages around shared open space. They have shared facilities such as parking areas and so forth to try and maximize the space. Again, a lot of these options are going to be limited by what they can do from a water and septic standpoint. We don't have water and sewer anywhere in town, and so they're going to need to be able to figure out how to meet all the proper codes and county requirements, county health. But if they can do that, we don't want to hold them back and say, you can build, we'd like to provide this as an option. So cottage courts, we're considering developing a section of the code that would enable this. It would essentially be a special, kind of rezoning of parcel to allow a maximum of between 8 to 12 cottages, with each cottage capped around a size footprint of around maybe 800 to 1,000 square feet in size. It's considered, right now, we're considering it for 2 of the hamlet zones, and they are both the hamlet zones, in the RL2 and RL3 districts by special use permit. So this would be something that would sort of need to be approved with a lot of review. So here we have going back to our list, cottage courts between 8 to 12 units in the special use permit in the hamlets, the special use permit in the RL2 and RL3. And this is a new use. Getting close to the end here. Senior apartments, the current zoning doesn't really have anything in place to address more age restricted or age limited housing, and I think that it should. I think that's something that we should provide for, because I don't think anybody's going to be against 55 and over neighbor, not party animals generally. So we'd like to see this. So we'd like to provide the option for folks to be able to go in and share on a place, or have a new place to age in place. So creating a new use type for this, which is specifically designed for seniors, and we're looking at committing them to the hamlet one or three districts by special use permit and by right in the business district. So from that, our handy chart again, senior apartments, special use permit in hamlet one and R3, and then allowed by right in the business district, which is the new use. Senior housing also as well, something that I think we're really going to need in the coming years. Senior housing is being considered as permitted by special use permit in the R3 district and allowed by right in the business district. So back to our chart, senior housing right here. So it would be special use permit in the R3, and the business district would be by right. Nursing convalescent home, as I mentioned, is already on the books right now, or exists. Right now, it's permitted in Hamlet 1 and Hamlet 2 districts by special use permit, and also special use permit in the RL3. At the moment, we haven't discussed any particular changes to that right now. And then finally, the planned residential development. Again, this would be the town board approved rezoning of a property, which would allow them more flexibility to design something, provided they met our design performance criteria. But right now, we're considering a PRD section of the zoning that would just be specifically for this type of use. PRD would need to meet certain criteria, such as we would want certain breakdown of different types of housing, or maybe it's age, has some age restricted housing, or maybe it has some more affordable units, so forth, depending on what we want to do. Each PRD would require approval for it to be enabled, and we're considering it right now in the RL3 and business districts. So by special use permit. So we have RL3 district and business district. So hopefully I got through all that on my time. This is a lot to absorb, and it's a bit of a Chinese menu for us to take a look at, but I want to kind of reaffirm with folks, we don't have to order everything on the menu. What we'd really like to hear from folks today is which of these options, what options do you support, and which ones would you like to see us follow through with, which ones might you have concerns about, and so forth. So real quickly, we're going to start to take questions. I just want to check the time, so I see if I'm on schedule here. Take questions and comments. For the folks of you on Zoom, please type any questions or comments you have in the chat, and Destiny will try and flag you down if you have 3 or so questions, and we can include you. We will read those online comments, and feel free to also use the comment card, but we just hope everybody, because we're on the time, let's try and keep comments succinct and move on. I'm going to put this up for reference, and I'm going to pick up my notepad and take the first questions and comments. Yes.
Hi, I'm Nancy Stock. I live in Malden Bridge, or no, just outside of Malden Bridge. The one thing that concerns me is being able to do this stuff by right. I think that it should require review. It should require town board review. The other thing is, while you mentioned septic and well, when you do one and it draws down the aquifer, you do another one and it draws down the aquifer more. Meanwhile, Joe, who's got his place over here, and has had his 120-foot well for years, suddenly now has to drill a new well to reach the aquifer. That needs to be taken into consideration, along with the septic, which you've mentioned. Are we gonna have water supply and sewage in the town? No, they might have it in the village. This is not the village. The other thing, you wanna know what's going on around you. The other thing that's not being taken into consideration is if you build something, you're not gonna rent it out for cheap. You're gonna rent it out at market rent. That's all there is to it. There's no reason if you put a huge amount of money saying converting your dairy barn into 3 apartments, you're not gonna rent those apartments out for less than what people are gonna pay everywhere else. So, this is not necessarily gonna be affordable. That's the other thing. I appraised real estate for the state of New York for 14 years. And I appraised real estate for the Department of Transportation for 8 years. We took the land and we had to appraise whatever we took. So I have some experience in this. Land developed is developed to its what they call highest and best use. That's the legally most profitable use return from that land. I don't think it's best, but that's what they call it. That's a nomenclature. So my concern here is that we go through all of this, people start building stuff willy-nilly, and that PRD thing at the bottom, don't let anybody fool you. That's just another fancy word for development. They build the roads in, they cut down all the trees, and they name the streets after them. That's how it works.
Any street after what they destroyed.
Yes. So if you want to see how Columbia County is going to progress, I say, look at the historical photos of northern Westchester County. Look at the historical photos of Orange County from, say, 1950 forward every 10 years. This is what's going to happen here. We used to have many farms. The land, the best use of the land was as farmland. Now we have many estates. Are they going to stay estates when these people that have a lot of money age out? Are their kids going to take an interest in maintaining estates? Are their kids going to say, how much can we get for this? So we need to be very, very careful about doing this. The last thing is that not every place is affordable. I'm sorry, it's not affordable in the Hamptons. It's not affordable in Palm Springs. It's not affordable in northern Westchester County. What's better served some of those areas is having better transit from affordable areas to the more expensive areas so people can work there. That's it. That's all I got.
In the back.
Hi, my name is Allison Marquesi. I'm a homeowner in Walton Bridge. I'm my neighbor here on 66. I've owned that house for 30 years. So I've seen the progression. I moved here because I wanted to live in a rural environment. I've also spent 8 years with the Community Development Corporation of South Berkshire. We built affordable housing. I know a little about the subject. I was the executive director. So, what I want to say out loud and for the record, I am totally against changing any zoning as your first step. The first step should be a business plan that we can all read, a timeline, a schedule, and a list of your partners. As you have noted in your announcements, you have said that you are already talking to a third party, and I would like to know who that third party is. Destiny and I had a conversation about that. I believe, as well as my neighbors, that this is a very delicate and costly conversation. The last units that we built in Great Barrington on Route 7 cost $20 million for an affordable housing complex. It took us 4 years and multiple partners to get that done. It's on Route 7, within walkable distance of services, healthcare, food, and public transportation. So, as well as I'd like to thank you for all the work that you're trying to do, because it is an important topic. I know that people want to live here. I can't afford to live on Park Avenue. I moved to a place I could afford 30 years ago, okay? I'm sorry that people coming out of high school and college cannot buy a home in Chatham. However, in the quick, I saw a home for $139,000. That's all I have to say. I'm offering myself as a consultant in any way, shape, or form that I can help.
One more in-person question, yes, sir.
You haven't at all addressed taxes implications from all these recommendations.
Sorry, what was that?
You haven't addressed the tax implications for all of your recommendations. As far as I can see, every one of them will raise the tax rates. Your starter homes will have very low tax rates, and lots of kids. Our school taxes are already astronomical, and they'll go up. Our retirement homes will have no taxes. Unfortunately, those people, which I probably have already become, are going to require a lot more services, and again, that will raise tax rates. I don't see a thing in your program that wouldn't raise tax rates. Those few people, I don't know how few, those fortunate people that have affordable homes now, they won't be affordable after the taxes are raised.
Taking, I don't know if it's taken online or what, okay. Somebody wrote in, can it be assured that PRD districts will not be allowed on agricultural land? That is a good question. I guess it depends on what your definition of agricultural land is. I'm a little bit hesitant. I want to protect farmland, but I'm also hesitant of the fact that farmers also sometimes want and need to have an out where they can sell some of their land. So how we do that would be, we have to be careful. I would argue that we should, maybe if we wanted to have some sort of a limitation or a guardrail on that, that we would base it on the quality of the soils on their land, that it could be not on certain quality, on certain higher quality agricultural soils, and that would be something that maybe if they had land that would be deemed lower quality, although I don't know if many farmers have that, but that maybe that would be one way of doing it, but comment noted that would be a concern. Any questions online?
No, I don't recommend.
Okay. Yes.
I sort of want to follow up on Nancy, I think it is, about the water issue. As you know, there are certain areas, for example, parts of East Chatham, that have very low water supply. And my concern is new people coming in, being totally unaware that not everywhere has good quality water or good quantity of water. And my first question is the committee aware of the areas that have compromised water supplies so they won't put new buildings of any kind? You know, it sounds like a good idea with the cottage court, but if they're going to put that in, and like the gentleman said about the taxes, somebody's going to have to buy a whole water system. And as I think it was Nancy said, that now you used to have a 120-foot well, and you got to drill 400 feet because all of those other houses just took all your water. What's going to happen to those people? And the other comment I have is about the ADUs. Sounds like a good idea, sort of, but not so much, because first of all, by not limiting who can be in there, if somebody runs an Airbnb out of their house, I've heard places that rent to 300 people to have a party. Well, they do that every week. And 300 people, they flush the toilet 300 times. They might want to take a shower if they're staying overnight. And if they come from out of the area, they don't even know that you don't have water for 10 people.
Quite honestly, some of us try not to have, multiple showers and run the dishwasher, and the laundry. No, we can't do that. So if somebody coming in, they don't know that you don't have the water.
So in conjunction with regard to the ADUs, you would rather see.
I would like to see those be limited, because if you're saying, okay, it's an ADU and we're gonna limit it to 2,000 feet, which is normally a one-family house, but a one-family, how many people is in a typical family? Let's say it's twice as many as the 2 parents and 2 children and a dog. Let's say it's 8 people or 10 people. Limit it to that. Don't let 50 people come in, much less 300.
So no short.
No, yeah, I would like to see no short-term rentals, because you can't control that. And that would cause the people, like somebody was saying about developing it and them not being affordable. The people who can afford to build those everywhere are gonna wanna make money.
Thank you. Gentleman with the walking stick, I can't tell if you're raising your hand or you're pressing it.
Well, I've certainly been thinking about talking.
Well,
Well, my name's Ted Miner. I'm a signed, sealed, and secured member of the I Got Mine Club, like we all here. I've raised 22 kids. I got 3 left in the community. And that's kind of sad. I've been involved in school for over 40 years, watching our school lose people, service clients. We're down to 930. At the end of the day, and I think this is real simple, think about all the people you've been seeing on the road biking, and count how many of them don't have white hair. And so the last thing I got to say is, everybody here 40 years and younger, raise your hand. All right, so if we want to talk about the future of our community, we better start talking.
yes, sir.
All right, there's a brief mention in the briefing about the pro-housing communities program, of which we recently, as I understand it, correct me if anything I say here is wrong, but we've been designated now, and there are other towns that have been designated in Columbia County and others that are applying. I can't quite figure out what the benefits are of being part of this program. It's certainly
The pro-housing community,
pardon me?
the pro-housing community.
Yes.
Okay.
It certainly obligates us to the pledge. We must have signed this pledge in order to get this designation, because the law clearly states you have to. And that sets out certain obligations. And those obligations are not consistent with what you presented here as to what the zoning board is working on and what might be part of the comprehensive plan. So I'm wondering that, having done this at a late stage, you have to go back and retrofit your comprehensive plan and your zoning proposals to comply with the pledge that is required to become a member of this pro-housing communities program.
Right.
So what I don't understand the benefits, as far as I can see from studying the program online, the benefits are access to this, what you refer to as a 650 million pile of money, but those are actually a whole bunch of separate funds, each having particular criteria for being able to access it. And also, it's not clear to me whether the town has to apply for those funds or where individual developers can apply for those funds to help create an economic development in the county, in the town. But I've called to your attention that among the commitments in terms of increasing the development capacity and the variety of housing options is supportive housing. And that goes to the origin of this plan in the first place. The origin was that New York City and other big cities, ironically, often in the most politically progressive cities, have a NIMBYism problem. So when they try to expand the housing for the homeless, for example, or for recent migrants coming in who in New York State are not given not allowed to have a work permit, have to be supported. Asylum seekers who were waiting for years for their claim, their request to be processed. These people have to be housed. So New York City finally gave up and they went out and tried to do it in Westchester. It took the people of Westchester about 5 minutes to get their NIMBY reaction going and rejecting it. So this pro-housing community program with the governors originated with that, with the idea that you could spread this problem out all over the state. And so my question is, since one of the requirements we have to comply with in this pledge is streamlining permitting for all these different categories of housing. So what I read, and this is a way to get around the kind of uprising from the community and legal channels to stop something. So you sort of agree in advance to streamline it. And the question is, how much of community control do you give away by doing that? So I may have some of this wrong. It may be that towns of our size and type can't access any of this money. Developers can't access any of this money. So this is not something that is a threat to our existence as we want to have it. I may be completely wrong, but you have not said a thing about this, and this is a big deal potentially. So I'm wondering, now I get suspicious, why aren't you disclosing this?
But I actually have a slide at the end.
Pardon me?
I have a slide at the end, but I wanted to get to this part first because this is what people wanted to talk about. I actually, I'll just jump in. I don't know the answer to your question about if the funding is available just to municipalities or developers. I'm actually not sure about that. I don't know very much about that program. But
Well, why would we sign up without knowing that?
I didn't sign up the town, but I've been working separately on this. The committees have been working on getting that designation. And
So
I believe
why
they would
not-
be more familiar with what the requirements are.
Who signed it?
Well,
So I don't look at here, I want public to speak as much as this, but we signed up for this. Being part of this pro-housing community makes us eligible for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, the New York Forward Grant, the Region Council Capital Fund, and the Market Growth Program. So most of those programs have to be administered to direct, they're nonprofits, like housing corporations that are nonprofits, like Habitat for Community, or municipalities. So similar to the Rivers Scotland Downtown Revitalization grant, Woodstock, did, those are the types of things that would be registered. That is what the pot of money that we can potentially address. That is what these specific programs are.
all right, well, let me ask you this. Do we have to retrofit our community plan and our zoning proposal, rezoning proposals to comply with conform to the pledge that we have made in order to get this designation?
I very much don't want to see that first, so I would rather everyone express their opinion so we can get back to this presentation, but happy to talk, happy to talk.
My gut, I don't know without checking the actual details of the pledge text, but my guts say no, because I think a lot of what we're trying to accomplish here is addressing what something like that is going to be saying. As far as streamlining process is what I was talking about with making some of these, like for example, two-family housing, instead of that being by special use permit, making that either by site plan review or allowed by right, which helps make it easier. That's part of what they're talking about. So that's part of what we're doing here.
So you're giving us a guess at what's required to comply with this.
Yeah, I'm not sure the actual text. Yes, sir. Red.
I understand that.
Please stand. Please stand.
Sure. Gary Smith, I'm from Alden Bridge. I understand that there's been some consideration of development on 295 in the area of Salakwa. My question is, are any of these options for consideration been tailored to help such a proposal conform?
Not specifically, no. One earlier point in our discussions with the committee, I was looking at the possibility of rezoning some of the hamlet area that's just outside of the village along 295. as you go up by, or before you get to Solagwa and the town offices. Some of that area, rezoning that to be a third different zone, like a Hamlet 3, if you will, for lack of a better term, and then providing something like that that would allow for denser housing than what we're talking here. We're capped right now at, I think, 8 units right now is what we're looking at. I don't know if that's economically feasible from a developer standpoint. So my concern was, would we want to have somewhere in town where you would be able to do more than 8 units to make it more, I think, feasible, economically feasible. And by placing it as close as we can to the village, we might have the option of extending in the future water and sewer services and coming up with a joint agreement with the village on that. The committees weren't very enthusiastic about that because they didn't feel it was very realistic from the standpoint of the natural terrain and so forth that exists there. They didn't feel that that would really work, so we shelved that temporarily in favor of some of these other things. That's the only consideration we've given really to that particular area. I don't know if you're speaking specifically about the Sol Aqua property, but I didn't have anything specific for that property.
For what it's worth, it's also illegal to rezone, to do spot rezoning. That's illegal in New York State.
I'm aware of that, and I wouldn't dream of doing that, but this would be rezoning. For a logical reason, it makes sense to have denser living, especially apartments or senior apartments in close proximity to the village, because you have public transit there, you have public utilities and so forth, and other shopping amenities there. It makes sense to put the denser housing near the denser establishment of the village. So that's where that came from. So that idea at the moment is going to take. Yes, ma'am.
I'm grateful and I'm impressed with the work that the committee has done. I know it's a cliche, but I don't think there is any perfect solution. I'm in favor of a lot of these. We have been talking about this issue for years now. I do live in the village, by the way. It's interesting to me to hear say, let's put it all close to the village, where, hello, the village gets no support from the town. But I'm here because I care about the town, the whole village. So I just want to point that out. The other thing is, I want to say, I think we do owe the next generation something. I don't agree with this. I got my house, so good luck to the rest of you. I don't feel that way at all. I feel like we really owe, that we are already leaving them an awful lot of problems. And I feel like we have an obligation to try to solve this. I know in the village committee, we spent years on a comp plan, a bunch of us were on the affordable housing committee. That was years ago. This goes on and on and on. And I just applaud that you're trying to answer something. If it's not perfect, at least get started. Most problems get better solutions as they go along.
I may just quickly. I know there's some skepticism that I've heard years and years on that, well, you can build this stuff, but it's not going to be affordable. And you can say, you're right, or this isn't realistic. And so on. I recognize that, but we have to try, we have to do something. And I think that setting the stage to be able to do some of this stuff might just help get along. I would hate to have a situation where there is somebody who wants to do something, but our regulations, put some words on paper, aren't letting. So all we can do is set the table. And set the table in an inviting way that will hopefully attract the right things that we want, and hope that somebody will sit down. They might not decide to sit down and eat, but we hope that they will. But if we don't set the table, they won't come. Yes.
Did you guys find out who people identify themselves for?
I've been asked to ask you to identify yourselves and speak. I don't know if you need to use the real names. high school. What's that, Abby?
Who was the last speaker?
Brand.
Bryn.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I lost track of who had their hand up, and we got a great audience today, yesterday in the back.
I feel like this is a little reaction, I'm sorry, my name is Hillary, I live in Old Chatham. This feels a little reactionary, real estate market is up and down all over the place, and for the record, I bought my house for $125,000 in Old Chatham in 2014. Before that, it was listed over $200,000, now it's listed over $200,000 again. I put 2 of my children through the Ichabod Green School District, and I made the great mistake of building a subdivision. I drive through there, I'm a landscaper, I'm a house cleaner, I work all over the community, and I see these subdivisions looking like defunct and dated. I grew up in Rockland County, I have been dodging, but I'm one of the transplants, I'm one of the people that tried to provide a good place for my children to grow up, and I cut down trees, and I built houses, and I tapped wells. My children don't want to live here. I have a 30-year-old, a 28-year-old, and a 14-year-old. None of them want to live in the country. They want to live in a town where they can walk to places, and they have that option. My son lives in the Boston area. He can't afford a house there, and he will have to go somewhere else. But I think that we have to pay very close attention to the fact that the market rules. We can't be reactionary. I'm for watching this stuff. But I lived in one of the subdivisions, and they're awful. They really are. And, to take a place and make 5 or 8 minutes out of it, I would love if the school district benefited from a more diverse environment, a more diverse culture, students with different life experiences. But again, then we start to fall into who's going to pay the school taxes for that. It is the people that own a home, the single family home or the multi-family home. I had an in-law apartment for my mother. There are workarounds, there are ADUs, and I understand all these in our paper, they may look lovely, and in Nantucket, I'm sure their cottage court looks adorable. But, who's going to pay the taxes on who are the developers? Because I see signs all over the place that Wyworks and all these other places are coming in and buying up land. There's a bunch of companies that are buying up single-family homes and escalating the rent so nobody can afford to live.
Do you think someone? Okay. Yes.
My name is Deb Butler. I've lived in New Concord for 50 years. My family has.
Speak up, please.
My name is Deb Butler. I live in New Concord, and I've lived there for 50 years. I came here as a child and enjoyed summers here. My background is a public policy maker for 2 governors and 2 majority leaders. I know something about housing, having been a developer in Albany. I know something about poor people's problems. I started with another person, a organization to help people pull themselves up by bootstraps. I understand the problems of poor people. My concern is that the approach by the people involved in the pro-housing movement is they're not very sensitive to good public policy making best practices. They have their own agenda, and they think because they're good people and want to do good things, it's going to happen. There's a reason there are best practices in public policy making, and it's to avoid problems. There's an expression, prior planning avoids piss poor results. And I think that's a little problem for this town. I don't think they understand the realities of doing something in this arena. My daughter couldn't afford to buy a house here. Rents are really, really expensive. I think this town needs better definition of whether and for whom they want to address this issue. It doesn't get affordable just because you wish it to be affordable. You kind of have to identify, and you sort of did that with your, we need to address the problems here and there. But the problem with that is, I think there's a lack of credibility and belief in people that have been involved in this endeavor. They are so strong-willed that they have not always been truthful and upfront about things. I know there are many people that don't like those kinds of comments, but it is the truth. And so when people lose credibility, you're going to get people pushing back very hard. We saw that in 2019. People didn't get reelected, the comprehensive plan didn't get put in place. And you're likely to see this reaction to these proposals. They don't seem to be very well grounded in all of the issues that people have raised so far. And those are important issues that need to be taken into consideration if you're in fact going to achieve your goals. So I think we need more data, and we need to be very specific. And this issue that was raised by my neighbor about the pro-housing obligations is very real. I work in public policy. When you make a pledge to an agency, they don't say, oh, was it pinky promise and that's okay? You have to perform. And if you're not performing, there's a problem. And sometimes you could get clawbacks. So I think people need to be that are working on this issue, that are in charge, need to be a little better connected with realities. There's an article maybe 6 months ago in the New York Times that said developers got 20,000 square feet. New Yorkers got nothing. That happens all the time. If the city of New York can't get developers to comply, how does anybody think the little town of Chatham, with a building department of 3 people, are going to accomplish that? You really just have to be not overly ambitious. And I think that this proposal, doing all of these at once, not only foul your ability to do what you want and achieve your objectives, but they also ignore the other things people in this town were concerned about. The environment, land preservation. And I don't see from the people involved in pushing the housing agenda any sensitivity to that.
I'm going to push back on that.
Please.
I'm sorry to hear you don't think that what we're doing is correct. We put a lot of work into this, and I know that doesn't necessarily check a box for everybody. But the reason we're having this meeting is to discuss with folks what it is we'd like to see. I've asked, we have a lot of options up here, and I explained we don't have to do all of these. It's a Chinese menu, we don't have to order everything on the menu. We're providing a lot of different alternatives and ideas. So far, one, maybe 2 people have spoken up and said, I like this and this. I'm hearing a lot of negativity, and I understand that, but I'd like to see some more proactive, like, okay, I understand this might not be very realistic, but I really think that if we're going to get anywhere, we have to make some agreement on the whole point we're having this meeting is so the committee can see, okay, how should we go forward? I disagree that we're not credible. We put a lot of work into this. Now be quiet. We'll get to the public comment. Yes, sir.
Matt Baroni, has the committee prioritized any of these selections?
No, I don't think so.
Is that what you're looking for?
That would help. I mean, that would help. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd
Sounds
say
like a good
accessory
idea.
dwelling units are pretty low hanging.
Sounds like a good idea to prioritize.
Yeah.
You're on Matt.
Matthew Baroni, East Chatham. First of all, I want to, only because you asked for more positive comments, I want to say that I like low-hanging fruit, like ADUs. In fact, if you were to try to find someone who's going to only look for low-hanging fruit, that might be me, including when I go to one of the fruit farms and start picking fruit. I'm not in for the challenge. But I'm just there for the fruit. But the other things I've noticed about what we've been talking about in terms of multiple family dwellings, see 4 to 8 people. 8 people stops looking like a multiple family dwelling and starts looking like apartment units. And I would like to avoid seeing this sort of like crowding idea. I think the reason why people who, whether they appreciate it as they get older or not, and there are people who came from here, left, made their fortunes, came back, because they do appreciate it. The idea of having your own single-family home is a very attractive one. And having that home not butted up against various multiple family structures, I can understand the concerns with that, which is why I'm really grateful for what Maynard brought up regarding this program that we've signed up, the pro-housing community. As soon as I saw these words, I immediately, well, a euphemism came to mind. The euphemism is called pro-housing community. That's the euphemism. It's something that sounds pretty to dress up something that's probably not so pretty. And I unfortunately do have an inherent distrust of New York State government and policy decisions of various people there that seem to be very ideologically centered and not centered on the needs of residents. We talked about these grant programs, we're gonna have access to all this money. That's our money, or our kids' money, that's been taken, and it's gonna be divvied out to satisfy somebody else's political and ideological goals. And I don't appreciate that. I don't think we should participate in the same way that I don't think the school system should be participating in a lot of these state grants, which have requirements attached. Because all that means is I'm basically signing up for more. I don't care if the other communities do it. I mean, I wish they wouldn't. But nobody should be doing it. And we shouldn't be setting a bad example by participating in it. When this gentleman over here made a great point about the taxes, the school taxes, I actually think there's a slightly different problem with the school taxes. I think that we are spending entirely too much on our school system. I can't remember how many kids I have. I have a lot of kids. Okay, thank you. You know, when you start to prove the mathematical formula to figure out what their ages are going to be, if you can just figure out what age one of them is, then you know you've got a bunch of kids. None of them have gone through the school system. I do pay school taxes, as do all these other people, and I tell you, I'm a little bit relieved that at least I'm not the responsible party for everybody else's gigantic school tax bill. But I think that we have this idea that's a completely separate idea from what this gentleman said, and I appreciate what he said, but I think the real issue is when there's those votes for the school budget, and there's these endless little increases, and now we have like the 35 million, like basically it's $35,000 per student per year.
41.
Okay, so I was a little low on my estimate. I mean, absolutely out of control. Please go to these things, vote no. There's only like 350 to 400 people that vote yes, and they vote for the same school board members that end up creating these or sort of continuing these problems by not bringing things under control. I understand that there are challenges with that. But moving back onto the family issue here, I would love to see a farmer be able to carve out, if he's got, you know, a particular 20-acre lot and he's doing some hay making on that lot. You know what? I've got a less than 3-acre plot. It's my family bought the property in the 1860s. Okay. It is surrounded on 3 sides by woods and on the other side by a county highway. It's very private in a sense. I'm sure the neighbors can hear our arguments and doesn't appreciate it. But the point is that relatively speaking, it's private. It's still secluded. It still maintains the character as long as you don't mind my rundown shabby house being part of the character. I think that idea of having those smaller lots with smaller houses that are not right up against each other and are integrated into the actual scenery in the sense of maybe behind, you know, again, you have woods on different sides. There's some other sorts of screening that's already there. I think that we should be focusing on things maybe like that. The problem though is that Nancy Stott brought up, and this is a fantastic point, is that people who are in Brooklyn, who have a small apartment, will be happy to move into a 1,200 square foot house in Columbia County. in a beautiful wooded environment, and that will increase the price. There may be some way that we can have some sort of tax incentive for the person who's doing the carve-outs, that there's some sort of income or previous location based, so we're not bringing more people in a sense into the area. And I'm fine with people moving into the area, but I'm not fine with them displacing existing residents, which is what ends up happening. And so I see some of these options that look like the PRD and the cottage courts. That to me is another euphemism. That's plebeian housing. Because I need somebody who's going to clean my house. No offense to house cleaners. I mean, but the point is the servile sort of, I need someone to take care of my estate. I need my landscaper, I need my lawnmower, I need my this, I need my that, I need my plumber. But here's the thing, I need my 40 acres. And I need my tennis courts. And I need this, and I need that. And I feel that that's what this sort of encourages. It's not that the people that do those jobs, I think people who do those jobs should be able to have a decent house on a little plot of land that's theirs. And grow it if they want. And maybe, you know, obviously, sure, go ahead and have 5 acres. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, though, the difficulty that we face here is not necessarily solvable by just expanding the housing, because that housing is just going to be, again, as Nancy pointed out, adjusted for market value and be on the market for a very short time and then occupied. And yes, there will be opportunities. I'm thrilled actually that you got a house for that lower price. That's fantastic. That's the kind of thing I'd love to see around. And the person who mentioned the thing on Timber from Lake, great. I mean, hopefully it's not because there's some horrific issue with it that makes it way more expensive than it was. But in any case, I appreciate the amount of time you guys have given me, and I apologize for taking so much of it. I do appreciate all the comments of my neighbors. They've all done fantastic work, and thank you.
Just a quick follow-up. Matt? Right. To your point about the woods and the secluded, would the idea of some sort of design standards or guidelines for any of this type of housing address some of your concerns?
I would actually be worried about those design standards.
I mean, if they only apply to something where we would be adding here, not to existing or new single family.
I think that review process that I believe Nancy mentioned would be incredibly important. I don't think that, I don't like the idea of taking control of somebody else's property and somebody else's vision for their home. I think that these things would naturally develop to an extent, as long as we're making sure that there aren't gigantic development companies creating cluster housing on our lands.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, in the back, woman in the black.
I think that would
Me?
Glasses on your head, sorry.
Hello, I'm Trinidad. I grew up in Chatham, as did my parents. And my grandpa was really involved in school, and I believe in the public school system. I'm here because I'm a little leery of the direction we're heading. I believe in public participation. I'm a little scared that we're removing that aspect from some of these uses. I'm also leery of third parties resolving a crisis we've already admitted we have zero control in. There's current 2 examples of those failings. One is the mobile home park in the village, which is exclusively no longer affordable. I believe you want to stay there for a month, it's over $6,000. And then also there's been missed opportunity by the town board and the planning board to redirect plans of a billionaire developer with Arco Mine that could have been nice housing. But sadly, those 2 things did not happen. So I do like the idea of the ADUs. I am concerned with the details. What is the rationale for decreasing the side yard setbacks in the hamlets to 5 from 10? Did people measure lots to make that conclusion? No?
Oh, you're asking?
Yeah.
I was trying to do that, suggest that as a way of trying to get some more developable space in the hamlets, which have traditionally very small lots. So if you were to have,
Did people measure the lots?
I'm sorry, what?
Did people measure the lots?
I did, yes.
You did.
In
A lot of
fact,
them have.
I looked at all of the lots in several of the hamlets to see if there would be any advantage to reducing the frontage requirements. So in other words, you may have, let's say, a 1 acre lot, you're required to have, I think it's 100 or 150 feet of frontage. Would there be any advantage to reducing the frontage requirements or the lot sizes in there to allow for some more flexibility? too much. The idea we go there was reduction of the side yards setback. That was only for accessory structures, like sheds, barns, or the ADUs. So that's the idea.
I do have a concern with that as being in a hamlet. I think that if a lot does not have, I think 10 feet is still sufficient as a side yard setback, and if a property does not have that, then maybe they should apply for a variance or modify their proposal to conform. And a lot of lots in the hamlets do have ample amount behind their houses. I would also suggest that maybe we increase incentives for creating ADA compliance with ADUs if senior housing is an issue.
Sorry, incentives for.
ADA compliance with ADUs. And then I did have a question, when you convert your primary into an ADU to build a larger house to become your primary, does your primary, the original primary, still have to meet that 1,000 or was it 2,000 square feet?
You would have the option of building a new house, moving into that, and then using your original house as an ADU, but the idea was we struggled with how to put some sort of a cap on it because we wanted to avoid somebody building something ridiculously big.
Yeah.
And so different communities handle it different ways. Some do it as a percentage of the size of their original house, and it gets complicated. We put the 2,000 square foot restriction in there because at this point we haven't agreed on what it might be.
So your primary unit, if it exceeds 2,000 square feet, that maintains as a primary unit.
I don't know how we would handle that situation. If you want to move into a new ADU that's bigger than your house and then make the other one your ADU, I'm not sure how we would handle that.
Okay, that's a little concerning, especially with the change in setback. I am for a lot of these things as well. I think cottage courts should be immediately axed from the proposals. On the May meeting, these were referred to as row houses. Row houses and tiny homes got very low support in the survey, and I don't believe they are supported by the comprehensive plan. I would suggest expanding the concept of a senior apartment. These are essentially 20+ unit apartment buildings. If you look at the examples around the village, Kane Home, High Point, such and such, they're all 20+. Those receive the lowest support on the survey, but people don't really consider senior apartments as being these large things. So I'm not against senior apartments, but I think we should expand the age limit, or maybe a percentage of the age limit. There are wonderful examples of mixed generational housing in this country, abroad. We could also put in the option, since the comprehensive plan highlighted the need for affordable daycare. If people want to build senior apartments that are 20+, why not put a daycare operation in as well, as that could be an incentive.
Okay, sorry, when you said expanding the age, you mean a wider range, so including younger, below 55
Yes.
or whatever?
Yeah. And then lastly, sorry, one more thing. I am really concerned with conflicting proposed zoning laws that directly compete with the concept of affordable housing. I noticed that we are considering putting lodging for tourists in RL1, RL2, RL3. That is a more intense use than what's allowed in business districts, a motel and a hotel. The inn should not be allowed, permitted by right in our rural land if we are concerned with affordable housing.
Lodging for tourists?
It's on the proposed changes. Available
Oh,
on
you
your
mean
website.
the use schedule?
Use schedule and definitions. There's a new definition. An inn, which is 6 to 20 bedrooms with a bar, tavern, and a restaurant, is being suggested to be permitted by right in all of the rural lands. I
don't think that's correct.
That's how that,
It's on your.
we made a group, we made a wonder, that's the case, we'll fix that, that's not.
Okay, so that's concerning.
Okay. Sorry, I know you already spoke, I'm gonna make sure somebody else doesn't. Yeah, certainly great.
Hi, my name is David. My wife, the comprehensive plan committee and have put a tremendous amount of time. And I've heard a lot of supposedly intelligent comments from neighbors here. And I would like to question those people as to why they did not join the committee with all that volunteers, so they could have had more input to the process of the committee rather than something.
Just wait, wait.
Hi, my name is Christine Newman. I'd like to say something.
Sorry.
My name is Christine Newman. I guess I live in LR2, and I'd like to talk about the existing land use of some of our property owners here. I think that there's a large group of people here that have similar interests, which is rural, agricultural, and equestrian. And density does not coordinate with that type of a lifestyle. And these landowners have chosen to move here for this lifestyle, which we all appreciate the beauty of. We left a community 3 years ago where we had this exact problem. We watched our agricultural community become overrun with developers to the point that our farms, we couldn't ride a horse out. They thought that they would incorporate a trail system. People developed things that had no idea of the use of an equestrian community. And that's what makes this community unique to us. Eventually we moved, and there are 60 homes in the backyard of my old farm, where we
Where you used to live.
where we left. So we moved our equestrian facility here, and we built on 17 for the specific reason that we had the fox hunt. That's how we found it here. You're talking now of developing LR3, which is the middle of 17 is potentially that, senior apartments, courtyard housing. Those, they don't coordinate. Agricultural communities, we have odors, we have flies, we have cows. People think it's very pretty from afar, but when you build next to it, and that odor, cows, and flies are suddenly in your kitchen, it's a problem to you. And so I just don't think they coordinate. I don't think it's thought out for this community to have that. And I think that a lot of people here also have that similar view, and it needs to be represented. The existing landowners purchased here for this reason. We didn't need it to change to something else that exists elsewhere. And if you want to develop density in New York City, you don't put it in Central Park.
We'll go ahead and next, finish.
Hi, my name is Lynn Martin. I live in the chair. My daughter's 35. Okay, sorry. My name is Lynn White. I live in the chair. I've been here for about 7 years. Raised both my kids there. I really love this accessory dwelling unit. When I bought my house that many years ago, I replaced a chicken coop with a barn, thinking, maybe one day my folks could live with me. I'm sad that never happened, but now that I'm aging, my son lives in Saratoga. He can't afford a house, so I have actually proposed that idea to him. I will sell my home. I will help you buy one if you can put me in your garage. One of the reasons that I'm considering leaving this area that I love so much is I'm not convinced that the healthcare here, that if I need it desperately, I'm not sure it's there for me. I would have to drive miles to get to a PT. And that's why, honestly, I'm considering moving. And I find the irony that we're in this meeting in a volunteer fire department hall. Is there being research done about the infrastructure and how potentially increasing the population is going to be served by these amazing people?
Oh, it's
Oh, sorry. Yes, John.
Two comments. Mostly as resident, 46 years.
Louder, please.
Speaking mostly as resident, 46 years.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the town for it. I think that unless the definition of has been changed, depending much too much on that term, to decide about tough things. But the reality is, every special use permit is, the way it's written, is it is a right, basically. Person has, the owner has the right to do it. And we have the town has the right to stop. Stop the town, we have the right to mitigate certain parts. So we basically say, okay, and then if the area is the idea is related to special use permits, I'm not in favor of it. That's number one. Number two, I advise the committee, I lived World War I, and World War II, Chatham, on zoning, that you think about when you're deciding what direction to go in, what it is people in these districts can live with, not what you think is best. Because you will have World War III. And it will become ugly again, people will forced to argue with one another, would not be necessary if you took that perspective. So I would advise the committee to think about that moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, Morris, East Chatham, Closure Road. One of the positive statements about the accessory dwelling units, which it also is just 1,000 feet sounds very large. I don't know what that's tied in with what's done in other communities. And one on every unit lot in every zone as of right, it just seems like that could a lot of stuff with very little control, and then there's force that flooded up against some of these property lines if the setbacks are reduced or good.
Just to follow up to your point, I believe it may be possible for the town to allow some of this, but say there's a townwide cap, so we'll allow the first 50 or whatever we pick. I mean, I don't expect every single family residential home in town to build accessory dwelling unit. I don't think that would ever happen, but if concern to earlier comments about water quality or water availability and other issues, would some sort of townwide cap on the number address some of your concerns?
Seems to spur a lot of competition. I'm not sure about that.
But
then also the same size unit on lots, no matter the size of the lot.
Sorry, can you explain that?
If you have a 2,000 square foot additional unit on a 2-acre lot, it's one thing. If it's on a much smaller lot, it's another. So in proportion.
Yes, that's true. One of the things that we struggled with was with regards to the ADU and having some sort of cap on the size, is many communities will say it's a percentage of your primary house. Well, that seems to negatively affect folks who start out with a small house and penalizes them and so forth. So we want to try and avoid that and make it more even to your point. Sorry, who will be, sorry, yes, or I think Red, I'm not sure.
Mary Jo Beeble, and I will just say as an aside, my daughter lives in Boston, and every time I want to get her going, I say, I'm going to put an auxiliary dwelling unit in your yard. No! Just like to respond to the woman who moved here 3 years ago. I'm on the Ag Partnership and I've been here for 20 years, and there are 33,500 acres in the town of Chatham, 1/4 of which are in active agricultural use. This number has not changed in the last 20 years, nor looking at demographic data has there been a huge influx of people wanting to do any of this. I thought, first of all, I commend the committee
And I thought the purpose of all of this is to be thinking expansively about a variety of possibilities, some of which will be chosen, some of which won't. But I think there's a lot of different opinions. I think what we all agree on is that we want to make it easy for people to either stay here, move here, age in place here, or whatever. So to me, the primary thing is what can we do to take barriers and roadblocks out of the way of people who want to be Chatham residents. And it's highly unlikely the population has gone down. It's highly unlikely we're going to have a huge influx of people coming in and doing these things. And if they do, I personally hope they do the cottage course, because I move in tomorrow if there was one.
Hi, I'm Joey Braille. I have Sinatra and some of solar clean magnetics in town. We're hiring clean magnetics, you know, anybody into a job for part-time. I have 200 acres, it goes from 295 to Highland Road. I've been wanting for years to turn that into a community land trust and have 40 to 60 plus their housing units. All the people that work for me are in that, paying more than 35% of their wages for housing. They're paying amazing amount for really lousy apartments. And I've been trying to propose to the town and to the county, which is very interested in community land trusts, putting in not just affordable housing, but net zero affordable housing. We can put in solar, we can power the houses with heat pumps, and they can be very affordable. I do spray foam insulation. I'm looking to be part of the building of this, but I can't do a development. It's too big a project. So I need to do it in conjunction with the town and the county. And I'm sort of, there's not any traction here to happen yet. But I would really love to have affordable places, net zero for my workers, for other people to come down the hill to the living workspace in the hill itself. And that's really moves forward. And I'm willing with the land to sell it, lease it, you know, to find a willing owner for a community land trust is usually the hardest part of the process. And I am a willing owner, and I'm a willing builder. And we can do this thing more as a community. I remember, I think it was the Chatham Elementary, when I first got here in 1984, built a playground for the kids. Yeah. And instead of it costing, you know, $40,000, they built it. I mean, the community came and built it. That's sort of the vision that I'm having for this place. The other thing I would like to say is it took me, I've been installing solar for 20 years in this area, and I've just had a real bitch of a problem for 5 months getting approval for 100 kilowatts on my roof. And Chatham now has got a moratorium on solar, and people come up to me and say, is Chatham anti-solar? And I don't know what the answer is. I know they're writing laws, but they haven't asked me what my suggestion would be to write the law. And I was putting 100 kilowatts on my roof. I have a USDA grant, which is competitive, which I obtained. I was trying to get it in before the end of last year. And usually I just apply for a building permit and I get it from Ulster, Dutchess, Columbia, anywhere else except the town of Chatham, put me through a 5-month hell.
Is your bid planning on being self-sustaining or is it completely?
No, it would be self-sustaining.
Just in the back, we got about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure I try and catch people have spoken.
Eric Wilson, Old Chatham. I just wanted to point out that we're more of a case in point testimonial in this for my wife and I, and family of all day. It's an effective picture of a little gray cottage, accessory building. We've done that in my family for 40 years up here in Grayville, and it's eminently successful. Not only has it been a great income stream, we always rented to young people, typically 20s, 30s, two of whom have gone and started their own business. The times we've had to have a changeover, we get 20 or 30 applicants looking to rent the place, and it's been really a pleasure doing that and having them as neighbors. They still are, and I want to point out that little cottage that's pictured there was the residence, my grandparents came from Finland, my dad, with 5 siblings, 7 children living in that little cottage. So we're all pretty comfortable, I'm sure. But I do want to suggest if anybody's interested, assuming that one of these options becomes a viable thing, I highly recommend it. And just one point that I want to make is perhaps if any of these initiatives are accepted or whatever, maybe do it on a provisional basis. And so on the first year, the town of Chatham allows 5 accessory dwellings or 2 multifamily gas stations or whatever, and then come back to over here. I know.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if it's me, but I want to be able to do it. You don't have the money. You're not going to take people's land, and we're not going to dictate anything. What we're trying to do, as Mary Gail said, I think, is to take away those lots. So if there are, if Jerry's project, if we become Jerry's project, if we become full houses, we're not going to do that. We're not going to dictate that. We just want to enable a variety of possibilities, and that's the purpose of the committee, is to share our thinking. We have no say. I don't have one power that we have in this room. This committee can't dictate anything. We're trying to come up with ideas. We want the community to hear them, we want feedback, and we want it to work. We want us all to, compromise and come together. And then it's up to the town. We make recommendations, but we don't enforce them. Go to the citizens, actually. So I don't know.
Hold on, Matt, I want to get somebody who hasn't spoken. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to sort of make a request of the zoning update committee and then we record your meetings and make them available to the public. I know you made that decision not to, but some of us do want to follow it, and it's not always convenient to show up on the days that actually posting it. So that was my first thing. The second thing, which I've already recommended to the applicant committee and the update committee several times, I would like to see our town or whoever is concerned about housing look into the option of look at Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard has an island housing trust. It's a community land trust. And the nice thing about that is that you kind of take houses off the market. I don't think, I think in the survey, people said they wanted to live in single family homes, they don't want to live in apartments. So that kind of, a lot of us feel like we have a lot of houses. We have 20 houses already. So one small strategy that I think could actually work, getting houses off the market and making them permanently available, but it's work. Just opening the landscape for this type of building is a little extreme for me. Again, I think a lot of these, you are going to consider these, you have to consider their location. To me, putting some of these structures outside the village, would be acceptable. If you put them in areas where we're trying to preserve farmland, maybe not so much because they don't look that. So again, it's a location thing.
Yes, sir. The glasses.
I'm John Lewis.
I live in Old Chatham, and East Chatham. Been here for a little over 6 years. First, I'd like to thank the committee for the work. It's really hard work and a lot of thought. I do believe the need is acute, is urgent. We just, in our experience, in talking to young people in the community, they grow up and leave because they can't afford to stay here, which is a real loss for us. Personally, and also in terms of the economy. But I would urge these proposals, like a lot of thought. I wonder if the goal is to promote affordable housing for seniors and for young people, which I applaud those goals. Which of these is most likely to advance that goal, promoting affordable housing? I can understand some of the comments that you about additional, I think accessory dwelling units will be dictated by some of the limitations that you put on the size and amenities. But I would think that the most likely way to promote affordable housing is having the land held in a community land trust, where the virtue of that fact, and in a sense, put some controls on the rental levels or the sale, resale levels, by virtue of the fact that the land is owned by the owner of the home is renting, essentially leasing the land, leasing the home on land owned by community land trust. Or in some of the, ironically, some of the larger development proposals, the approval process, I would imagine it possible to work with someone who has the money to actually build that in granting approval, there's a negotiation. The negotiation put into requirements with respect to lease rental terms. You have the flexibility if someone needs to approve town, you might be able to negotiate some restrictions on rental levels. I would urge you to really consider which of these are more likely to promote goal for affordable housing.
Yes, sorry for the second time, but I wanted to sort of specifically address a question that David brought up again, David LeBeau, who I'm very fond of for the funds here. Michael, earlier in this presentation, you said that you guys did a lot of work and you don't, you know, that doesn't always check boxes for people. And I agree, it doesn't check boxes for me. And I appreciate the fact that someone did work. And I also appreciate the fact that having done that work, I'm going to disagree maybe with quite a lot of the work. And that's, I'm generalizing, I'm not talking about the specific instance. That's been the case many times in my life, where lots of people who've done years of work and then I come in and just start tossing grenades. And you're welcome, by the way, for saving society. But in any case, to answer David's question, the reason why people aren't here is often the reason why I'm not always at these meetings. You know, like David, I'm a firefighter, I'm an EMT, volunteer in East Chatham. I'm the master of East Chatham Grange. I'm the president of the Hudson Lions Club. I'm a 4-H leader. I've got a fairly decent-sized family with a lot of needs, and I own my own business. There's not a lot of spare time. It's the consistory of my church. Almost every night of the week, I've got some sort of meeting, and if I don't, it's because I skip the meeting. So it's really difficult to tack on and to add on, and this is not something that's exclusive to town issues. In almost every organization, you'll find much more or less well-intentioned efforts to sort of change the nature of various organizations by having gigantic plans. Nobody has time to really digest them. And by doing these things with their own spare time, and then say, well, you weren't there for the meeting. we don't have enough time to be there for everything. We have to be able to trust our neighbors to make what this is, which I think it was, a successful meeting, which is you guys presented the options you came up with. And a lot of us said, we don't like 80% of those, because it sounds like cluster housing, and we don't want cluster housing. We want individual ownership and the people that have a stake. I'm just actually speaking for myself. The people have talked about the issues with the actual market forces that are going to be at stake and wells and all these other sorts of things. So I think this is a very successful enterprise, and I think that we should try to do them more. But again, that's like, okay, now I'm signing myself for another meeting.
No, you get burnt out.
So I do appreciate the idea that, all this work was spent, and all this time spent, the work was done, and it is hard work. But I also want people to keep in mind that other people are already doing a lot of other stuff, and that work they did, when it gets reviewed and maybe even completely rejected, in a sense, that's not actually completely negative, because now you know what people don't want. Thank you.
Thank you. What you just said, that's the reason why we're hosting this in the firehouse on a Saturday afternoon, and the committee begs me to take the first day off of school for my kids to come down here and present, because we're trying to make it more convenient for people to participate, and why we have this also running on Zoom. Do we have any Zoom questions? I love it. 2 minutes left. Okay. Yes.
So I'm Nancy Capel. I'm a member of the Housing Committee, and I've been in the community for about 14 years. The reason housing is affordable is because it is subsidized. And we are not going to be able to provide affordable housing unless we look for programs that are going to be able to provide subsidy. Because housing is expensive to build.
We're having trouble here.
Housing is expensive to build, it's complicated to build, it draws on very existential, emotional aspects for people. It's a complicated issue and it pulls in everything. But unfortunately, we don't exist in a community in isolation from the world around us, and the pressure from the world around us has caused the situation. We are trying on the Housing Committee to do our best to come up with ideas that are going to be workable to enable the people who are already here to stay here, in particular young people and seniors. So we would appreciate anyone coming to our next meeting, which is this Monday at 6 p.m. 6:30 p.m. at Town Hall. But please know that affordability is generally made by subsidies. So we may have to hold our nose for some of these programs to get those subsidies, but otherwise the money is not there.
Hopefully, if I did everything right, we're recording this and let you have a link up in the next day or two on YouTube for people who missed it. And also get a comment form for if you get home or somebody wasn't able to attend. I will give you the address for that. We'll put that up on the screen so you can, it's access there. So if you get home and you have additional thoughts, please. But we have time for one or two more quick questions. Yes.
Michael, I appreciate your efforts in coming here and getting the feedback. Started with a comprehensive plan of people having an idea of what they wanted that plan to look like. And as you well remember, you had to do a bunch of revisions. And I think you might have been misled in thinking this was going to be an easy town to sell an idea to. The second time around, we had the same situation. People here have different ideas and different goals. And I think this is what you're hearing. And I think the committee is very committed to what they're committed to. And people feel the committee is not listening to people that have different issues about the environment, land preservation, etc. The fact that we had a supervisor say gleefully, oh, we can take the Prop 3 monies and turn it into housing monies. That doesn't inspire confidence in leadership. That's a real problem.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you all for coming.
My name is Destiny Halbeck, and I'm chair of our housing committee, I'm a Chatham class of 2018 graduate. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We wanted this, we wanted everyone to show up and give us your opinions. That is what we wanted.
Where's the slide on the $608 million?
I can do that. We're on the stage, we need 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
No, thank you. I'll put the address up to comment form in a minute. Thank you all.